begin reading from his book here. Reminiscences with the Century. Let's see. Any bigger? Not really. We'll do it like this still then. Okay. Here we go. Reminiscences with the Century. The comrade writing. Maybe even working on this very book. Actually, I'm gonna press record. Hold on. Or no, I'll just cut it out with the highlight feature. Even better. Okay. Kim Il Sung with the Century. The Anti-Japanese Revolution. This is the translation from what we just saw on that previous page. Revolutionaries believe in the people and rely on them at all times, and you shall always emerge victorious. If you are forsaken by them, you will always fail. Let this be your maxim in your life and struggle. Mangyongdae before liberation, where Kim Il Sung grew up. Over here on the left, we have grandfather Kim Po Hun, August 19th, 1871, September 2nd, 1955, and grandmother Ri Po-ik, May 31st, 1876 to October 18th, 1959. Kim Il Sung's father here on the right, Father Kim Hyung Jik, July 10th, 1894 to June 5th, 1926. His mother, Kang Pan Sok, here from April 21st to 1892 to July 31st, 1932. Over here on the right, Uncle Kim Hwang-gun in prison, November 4th, 1905 to January 12th, 1936. And younger brother Kim Chol-ju in his days in Fusang, June 12th, 1916 to June 14th, 1935. Maternal grandfather Kang Ton-uk, cousin Kim Won-ju, maternal uncle Kang Jin-sok here on the left. And then here is some important pictures we got to share. A Country in Distress. Japanese warships in Incheon Harbor, 1894. The whole country turned into a prison. A Japanese mounted policeman puts down the people. Patriots are executed for resisting Japanese invaders. Righteous volunteers, soldiers under the banner of anti-Japanese national salvation. On the left, up above here. And then below that, we have the March 1st popular uprising. Then Ang Jun-gun and his writing. And this is Kim Il Sung's father, his maxim, which was aim high. The Sunhua School in Mangyongdae on the right. the Myeongsin School in Ponghya-ri, Kangdong County, and the stone monument to the Stone Monument Association in Ponghya-ri. Here on the left is Pyongyang Prison. And on the right, the report on the case of the Korean National Association. Oh Tong-jin and his house, where the Cheongsu-dong branch of the Korean National Association was formed. We're going to learn about all these as we go. But you can see there's the building. Jungang Inn, at which anti-Japanese independence fighters used to lodge. And on the right here is the place where Cheongsu-dong meeting was held in 1918. The inn at Yongbori, where my father escaped from the escort. And on the right, a secret rendezvous in Linjiang. And this is the route of the 250-mile journey for learning. To learn about the people that Kim Il-sung embarked on. From March 16th to March 29th. Kangyi Post Office, where I sent a telegram for my first time in my life. Kangyi Inn up here, which you can see on the map, is right here. The locomotive which plied between Sinyeonju and Checheon. My mother's maiden home, here on the left. Chilgol. Changdok School, on the right. Kang Rang-uk in his youth. Kang Yun's Bum, my friend in the days of Changdok School. Pyongyang City Center in the early 1920s. So there's old Pyongyang right there, a picture of it. Popyeong, a town in the northern tip of Korea on the left, and a laundry site on the river Bado on the opposite side of Pyongyang. Ogyubi on the bank of the river Amnak, where I stayed overnight with my younger brothers on our journey to Linjiang on a horse-drawn sleigh in January 1925. A restaurant in Linjiang where the independence fighters used to visit. Here on this picture. I love how it shows these pictures before we get reading. My house in Jianmen Street in Fusang. Peksan School in Fusang, the thatch building, where the newspaper signal was launched. Jang Hoo-he, an unforgettable man, his house in Fusang and the room where he committed suicide. And here on the right is Kim Il-sung, in the days when he formed the Down with Imperialism Union, 1926. Site of the Hwasong Yusik School. The hostel of the Hwasong Yusik School and its interior. Kangji-ha, the school superintendent, over here on the right. Kim Siu and his uncle were the members of the Down with Imperialism Union, frequently held secret reading sessions in this building. And Ko Tong-o, headmaster of the school. And this here is the room in my house in Fusong where my father passed away on June 5th, 1926. Ri Kuan Yin, a heroine of the Independence Army. Yang Dikin in Fusong. And here's the June 10th Independence Movement, 1926. The bank of the River Hufa and a general view of Hudan, where DUI was formed. And this is the publication introducing the formation of the Down with Imperialism Union and its activities. And this here on the right is Kim Il Sung in the Days in Jilin in 1927. Yuwin Middle School in Jilin. It's the classroom where he studied. And there's Kim Il Sung's chair in the classroom. The school hostel, the school library, the cap badge. Jiang Chou Ho, Fushtang Rice Mill in Shenghua Street, Jilin. Up here. The Reverend Sun Zhang Do. An Chung Ho and Tong A reporting his arrest. And Jilin Railway Station in the early 1930s. Cha Kwang-soo, a young communist. Beshin Park in Jilin. The Yawang Shrine in Beishin Park, and the cellar of the shrine, where the Young Communist League members in Jilin used to hold secret meetings. Oh, look, with the floorboards coming up. See that? Wow. Publications reporting on the struggle of young peoples and students in those days. Jiang Hu and his reminiscences. And here's Jilin Prison here. The Jilin Prison. A watchtower of the prison on the right. Corridor of the prison on the left. An outer view of the cross-shaped prison on the right here. This is the cell where Kim Il Sung was held. The two cells he was held in. Kang Myung-gun, whom I met in prison. Here on the right, this big picture here. This is Kim Il Sung. In my days before launching the underground struggle, with Ko Jae-rung on my right, when I sometimes wore Chinese Duba Zhanzi dress. And here we go. The preface we have now come to. It is extremely moving for a man to look back on his past in his latter years. People lead different lives and their experiences are varied. So it is with different feelings that they look back on their past. I look back on my life with deep emotion and have strong memories as an ordinary man and as a politician who has served his country and people. The country and people I have served always occupied an important position in world politics. I was born in the first period of the country's ruin, in the great national tragedy, and spent the early years of my life in the vortex of the rapidly changing situation at home and abroad. And I came to join my fortune with that of the country and share good times and bad with the people in my childhood. Following this path, I have now reached 80 years of age. My whole life, which has flowed with the current of the 20th century when the life of mankind has undergone unprecedented vicissitudes and the political map of the world has changed beyond recognition, is the epitome of the history of my country and my people. Naturally, the course of my life has not been all joy and success. There have been heartbreaking sorrows and sacrifices, and many twists and turns and difficulties. While I made many friends and comrades on the path of my struggle, there were also many people who stood in my way. It was this right here. You can see him wearing it. He's the one on the right hand side of this picture. Dabujanzi dress. It's like an old school Chinese style that used to be worn a lot. My patriotic spirit made me, as a teenager, cry out against Japan on the streets of Jilin and carry on a risky underground struggle, dodging the enemy's pursuit. Under the banner of anti-Japanese struggle, I had to endure hardships, going hungry, and sleeping outdoors in deep forests of Mount Pektu. Pushed my way through endless snowstorms and waged long, bloody battles convinced of national liberation, fighting against the formidable enemy scores of times stronger than our forlorn force. After liberation, I had to spend many a sleepless night in an effort to save the divided country and again go through undescribable difficulties and distresses in the days of building and defending the people's state. In this course, however, I have never once shrunk back or hesitated. I have always held a steady helm in my life's rough voyage. And I owe this to my comrades and to the people who have helped me in good faith. The people are my God has been my constant view and motto. The principle of Juche, which calls for drawing on the strength of the masses, who are the masters of the revolution and construction, is my political creed. This has been the axiom that has led me to devote my whole life to the people. I lost my parents at an early age, and I have spent my whole life amid the love and expectations of my comrades. I hewed out the path of bloody struggle, together with tens of thousands of comrades. And in this process, I came to realize keenly the real value of the comrades and organization that shared their lot with me. I remember my early comrades of the Down with Imperialism Union, who believed in me and came to follow me on the hill at Houdian in the 1920s when there was no telling as yet if we would ever liberate our homeland. And then those splendid comrades who shielded me from the enemy bullets and who laughed as they took their comrade's place on the scaffold. They never returned to liberate. They never returned to their liberated homeland. They are now lying as spirits of revered memory in the fields and mountains of a foreign country. The many patriots who started on a difficult path of struggle but joined up with us in the end are no more by our side. As I witness her revolution progress triumphantly, and our country prospering, with all the people singing its praises. My heart aches with the thought of the comrades who laid down their lives unhesitatingly for this day. Often I lie awake at night with their images before my eyes. As I witness our revolution progressing triumphantly, and our sorry, in fact, I little thought of writing my reminiscences. Many people, including celebrated foreign statesmen and well-known literary men, urged me to write my reminiscence, saying that my life would serve as a precious lesson for the people. But I was in no way in a hurry to do so. Now that a large part of my work is being done by now that a large part of my work is done by Secretary for Organizational Affairs Kim Jong-il, I have been able to find some time. With the change of generations, veteran revolutionaries have departed from this life, and the new generation has become the pillar of our revolution. I came to think that it was my duty to tell of the experiences I have gained in the common cause of the nation, and how our revolutionary forerunners gave their lives in their youth for this day. So I came to put down in writing what has happened in my life, a few lines each time I found a spare moment. I have never considered my life to be extraordinary. I am content and proud to think that my life has been dedicated to my country and nation and spent in the company of the people. I hope that what I write will convey to prosperity the truth and lessons, the life of struggle, that if one believes in the people and relies on them, one will regain one's country and win victory every time. And if one ignores people and is forsaken by them, one will surely fail. Praying for the soul of the departed revolutionaries, the Myeonghang Mountains, April 1992. Chapter 1. The Country in Distress. My family. So this covers the years for Kim Il Sung, April 1912 to June 1926. My family. My life began in the second decade of the 20th century, when Korea was going through the bitterest period of its national tragedy. Before my birth, my country had been reduced to the colony of Japan, with the signing of the annexation of Korea by Japan. The sovereign power of the king had passed to the Japanese emperor, and the people of this country had been made slaves, who were compelled to act under the decrees of the government general. Our country, with its long history, rich natural resources, and beautiful mountains and rivers, found itself trampled underfoot by the Japanese military. The people were deeply grieved and trembled with indignation at being robbed of their state power. In the fields and houses of this land, where there was wailing all day after the nation's fall, many loyalists and Confucian scholars killed themselves, unable to bear the agony of the country's ruin. Even nameless people from the lowest class, lamenting the tragic fate of the country, responding to the disgraceful annexation of Korea by Japan by committing suicide. A barbaric system of rule by gendarmerie and police was established. And moreover, even primary school teachers, to say nothing of policemen and civil servants, wore gold lace uniforms, regulation caps, and sabers. On the strength of imperial ordinances, the Governor General controlled the army and navy and exercised unlimited power to stop the ears and mouths of our people and bind them hand and foot. All political and academic organizations founded by Koreans were forced to disband. Korean patriots were thrashed with lead weighted cowhide lashes in detention rooms and prisons. Law enforcement agents who had adopted the methods of torture used in days of the Tonghua Shogunate burned the flesh of Koreans with red hot iron rods. Successive decrees of the government general were issued to blot out all that was Korean, even forced Koreans to dye their traditional clothes black. The big businesses of Japan that had come across the Korean Strait carried off heaps of treasure and the riches of our country in the name of various ordinances, such as the Company Act and the Survey Act. While visiting various parts of the world, I've had the opportunity of seeing many former colonial countries, but I've never seen imperialism so hideous that it deprived people of their language and surnames and even plundered them of their tableware. Korea, in those days, was a living hell. The Korean people were no more alive than dead. Lenin was absolutely correct when he said, quote, Japan will fight so as to continue to plunder Korea, which she is doing with unprecedented brutality, combining all the latest technical inventions with purely Asiatic tortures. Unquote. My boyhood coincided with the time when the imperialists were struggling fiercely to redivide their colonies throughout the world. In the year of my birth, successive sensational events took place in many parts of the world. That year, a U.S. Marine Corps landed in Honduras. France made Morocco its protectorate, and Italy occupied the roads of Turkey. In Korea, the Land Survey Act was published, and the people were restless. In short, I was born at an uneasy time of upheaval and passed my boyhood in unfortunate circumstances. This situation naturally influenced my development. After hearing from my father about the circumstances of our country's ruin, I felt a profound bitterness against the feudal rulers and made up my mind to devote my life to regaining our nation's sovereignty. While other people were traveling the world by warship and by train, our country's feudal rulers rode on donkeys and wore horsehair hats, singing of scenic beauties. Then, when aggressive forces from the west and east threatened them with their naives, they opened the doors of the country that had been so tightly closed. The feudal monarchy then hosted a contest for concessions in which the foreign forces had their own way. Even when the country's fate was at stake, the corrupt and incompetent feudal rulers, given to flunkeyism towards the great power for generations, indulged in sectarian strife under the manipulation of the great powers. So when the pro-Japanese faction gained the upper hand, Japanese soldiers guarded the royal palace. And when the pro-Russian faction was more powerful, Russian soldiers guarded the emperor. Then, when the pro-Chinese faction got the better of others, Chinese guards stood on sentry at the palace. As a result, the queen was stabbed to death by a terrorist gang within the royal palace, The Omni incident in 1895. The king was detained in a foreign legation for a year, moving to the Russian legation in 1896. And the king's father was taken away as prisoner to a foreign country. Yet, the Korean government had to apologize to that country. Sound familiar? Even when the duty of guarding the royal palace was left to foreign armies, who was there to guard and take care of this country? In this wide world, a family is no more than a small drop of water. But a drop of water is also a part of the world, and cannot exist apart from the latter. The waves of modern history that spelled the ruin of Korea swept mercilessly into our house. But the members of my family did not yield to the threat. Rather, they threw themselves unhesitatingly into the storm, sharing the nation's fate. Our family moved north from Jeonju in North Jeolla province in search of living at the time of my ancestor Kim Kye-sung. Our family settled at Mangyeongdae at the time of my great-grandfather Kim Il-yu. He was born at Jangseong-ri in Pyongyang and worked as a farmer from his early years. He was so poor that he became a gravekeeper for the landlord Ri Fyong-taek in Pyongyang and moved to the gravekeeper's cottage in Mangyeongdae in 1860s. Mangyeongdae is a place of great scenic beauty. The hill by the house is called Nam Hill. And when you look out over the river Taedong, from the top of the hill, you command a view that is like a beautiful picture scroll. Rich people and government officials vied with one another in buying hills in the Mangyeongdae area as burial plots because they were attracted by the beautiful scenery there. The grave of one governor of Pyongyang province was at Mangyeongdae. Working as tenant farmers from generation to generation, my family eked out a scanty living. The family line had been continued by a sole heir for 3 generations, before my grandfather, Kim Po-hyun, produced 6 sons and daughters. Then, the number of members of my family increased to nearly 10. My grandfather worked hard to feed his children. At early dawn, when other people were still in bed, he would go around to the village to collect manure. At night, he would twist straw ropes, make straw sandals, and plain straw mats by lamplight. My grandmother, Ri Po-ik, spun thread every night. My mother, Kang Pan-suk, weeded the fields all day long and wove cotton by night with my aunts Hyun Yang-sin and Kim Kilyan-yo, Kim Hyung-sil, and Kim Young-buk. Ours was such a poor home that my uncle, Kim Young-ruk, was unable to attend school and helped my grandfather in farming from his boyhood. A slight knowledge from the 1,000-character text, a premiere of Chinese characters he learned at the age of 9, was all the education he got. All the members of my family toiled as hard as they could, but they could never afford enough gruel. Soda, stop pressing buttons. Can you stop Soda from pressing the buttons? All members of of my family toiled as hard as they could, but they could never afford enough gruel. Our gruel was prepared from uncleaned sorghum, and I still remember that it was so coarse that it was difficult to swallow. She's just in there, beep, 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 beep. All the member. I'm sorry, I already said the gruel one. Soda distracted me. So such things as fruit and meat were beyond our means. Once I had sore throat.
Smokes.
Once I had a sore throat, and grandmother obtained some pork for me. I ate it, and my throat got better. After that, whenever I felt like eating pork, I wished I had a sore throat again. While I was spending my childhood at Mangyeongdae, my grandmother always regretted that we had no clock in her house. Although she was not a covetous woman, she was very envious of clocks hanging on the walls of other houses. In her neighborhood, there was one house with a clock. I've heard that my grandmother began to speak enviously of that clock after my father began attending Sungsil Middle School. Because we had no clock, every morning she would wake up before dawn after a restless night and, guessing the time, quickly prepare breakfast. It was 12 kilometers from Mangyeongdae to Sungsil Middle School, so my father might have been late for school if she had not cooked breakfast early enough. Sometimes she would prepare a meal in the middle of the night and, not knowing if it was time for her son to leave for school, sit looking through the eastern window of the kitchen for hours. At such times, she would say to my mother, "Go and find out what time it is at the house behind." However, my mother would not enter the house, reluctant to bother the people there, but would squat outside the fence waiting for the clock to strike the hours. Then she would return and tell grandmother the time. When I returned home from Baidaogo, my aunt inquired after my father before telling me that whereas my father had a hard time walking a long way to school every day, it would be good for me to go and stay at my mother's parents' home in Chingol, as the school was nearby. My family could not afford the clock my grandmother so desired until national liberation. My family, though living only on gruel, were warm hearted and ready to help one another and their neighbors. Quote, "We can live without money, but not without humanity," was what my grandfather used to say when admonishing his sons and daughters. This was the philosophy of my family. My father was sensitive to new things and had a great desire to learn. He was taught the 1,000-character text at the private village school, yet he was always anxious to go to regular school. In the summer of the year when the emissary incident at The Hague took place, a joint athletics meeting was held in Solmay village, with the participation of the pupils from Sunhua, Chua, Jilko, and Sunghung School. My father went to the athletics meeting as a champion of the Sunhua School, and took first place in many events such as the horizontal bar, wrestling, and running. But in the high jump, he lost first place to a competitor from another school. What happened was that his pigtail was caught in the crosspiece, and this prevented him from winning. After the sports meeting, my father went up the hill at the back of the school and cut off his pigtail. In those days, it was no easy thing to cut off one's pigtail without the permission of one's parents, and in disregard of the old convention that had been passed down over hundreds of years. My grandfather took the matter very seriously and created a great fuss. By nature, my family were strong in character. Afraid of grandfather, my father dared not to come home that day. He hung around outside the fence, so my great grandmother took him to the back gate and gave him a meal. She loved him dearly, he being the heir to the family. My father would often say that he was able to attend Sungsil Middle School thanks to her kind assistance. She persuaded my grandfather, Kim Po Hyung, to allow my father to go to modern school. In those days, when feudal customs still prevailed, my grandfather's generation were not very impressed by modern schools. My father started at Sungsil Middle School in the spring of 1911, the year after the country's ruin. That was in the early period of the introduction of modern civilization. So few children of the nobility were receiving the new style school education. It was very difficult for poor families like ours that could hardly afford enough sorghum gruel to send our children to school. The monthly tuition fee at Sungsil Middle School at the time was 2 won. To earn 2 won, my mother went to the river Songhua to collect shellfish to sell. My grandfather grew melons. My grandmother young radishes, and even my uncle, who was only 15 years old, made straw sandals to earn money to help his elder brother with his school fees. My father worked after school until dusk in the workshop run by the school to earn money. Then he would read books for hours in the school library before returning home late at night. After sleeping for a few hours, he would go to school again in the morning. So his whole family worked so that he could go to school. As is clear, our family was a simple and ordinary one, the like of which could be found commonly in any farm village or town in Korea in those days. It was a poor family that was not particularly outstanding or remarkable in comparison with other families. But my family were all ready to sacrifice themselves without hesitation when it came to doing something for the country and the people. My great grandfather was a gravekeeper for another family, but he ardently loved his country and hometown. When the U.S. imperialist aggressor ship, General Sherman, sailed up the river Taedong and anchored at Turu Islet, my great grandfather, together with some other villagers, collected ropes from all the houses and stretched them across the river between Konyu Islet and Mangyun Hill. Then they rolled some stones into the river to block the way of the pirate ship. When he had heard that General Sherman had sailed up the Yungak Island and was killing the people there with its cannons and guns, and that its crew were stealing the people's possessions and raping the women, he rushed to the walled city of Pyongyang at the head of the villagers. The people of the city, with the government army, loaded a lot of small boats and firewood, tied them together, set them on fire, and floated them down towards the aggressor ship. So that the American ship was set on fire and sank with all hands. I was told that my great grandfather played a major role in the attack. Nice catch, whoever just caught that Hwasong launcher. Sued, nice. After the sinking of the General Sherman, the U.S. imperialist aggressor sent another vessel, the warship Shenandoah, which sailed into the mouth of the river Taedong, where its crew committed murder, incendiary attacks, and pillage. The people of Mangyongdae again formed a volunteer unit and fought to defend their country from the Shenandoah. My grandfather used to say, a man should die fighting the enemy on the battlefield. Always told his family to live honorably for their country. And he offered his children unhesitatingly to the revolutionary struggle. My grandmother, too, taught her children to live uprightly and stoutly. Once the Japanese treated her harshly by dragging her around the mountains and fields of Manchuria in the depth of winter in order to make me submit. But she scolded them and remained strong and proud as befitting the mother and grandmother of revolutionaries. My maternal grandfather, Kang Ton-uk, was an ardent patriot and a teacher who devoted his whole life to the education of the younger generation and the independence movement. teaching the children, young people at the private school he had founded in the home village. My maternal uncle, Kang Jin-suk, was also a patriot who joined the independence movement when he was still young. My father taught me tirelessly from my early childhood to foster profound patriotism. From his desire and hope, he named me Songju, meaning that I should be a pillar of the country. As a pupil of the Sungsil Middle School, he, with his two younger brothers, planted 3 white aspens near the house to symbolize the 3 brothers. In those days, there were no white aspens in Mangyeongdae. That day, my father told his brothers that the white aspen would rapidly grow a tree, and that they, the 3 brothers, should grow rapidly and strong like the tree, so as to win national independence and enjoy a good life. Later, my father left Mangyeongdae to continue his revolutionary activities, and following him, my uncle Kim Hyung-gun took the path of struggle. Oh, come on. Okay, we're on 11. I'm gonna reload, see if that fixes it. The page is being funny. Oh my god. No! What? Okay, well, there is other versions. I just like this one with the fucking pages. I don't know what just happened now. Wow. Really? What the fuck? Okay, there, it's back. Good lord, that's ridiculous. It just like it stopped working suddenly. Then only my eldest uncle was left behind in Mangyeongdae. But the 3 white aspens grew into tall trees. But their shadows fell across the fields of the landlord. The landlord said that the shadows would harm his crops, and he felled the trees. Yet our family could not protest. Such was the lawlessness of the time. I heard of this when I returned home after the liberation of the country. I felt really angry about it as I remembered my late father's beautiful dream. This was not the only cause of regret. Several ash trees had stood in front of my old home. As a boy, I would often climb the trees and play with them with my friends. When I returned home 20 years absence, I discovered that the tree that had stood closest to the house was no longer there. My grandfather told me that my uncle had cut it down. The story was really pitiful. While I was waging war in the mountains, the police had tormented my family unbearably. Police from the Taepyeong substation took turns to keep our house under surveillance. Taepyeong was some distance from Mangyeongdae, and in the summer, the shade afforded by the ash trees served as a sort of guard post. As they sat in the shadows, they would call to the villagers or fan themselves to sleep. Sometimes they would drink alcohol and eat chicken, or harass my grandfather and uncle. One day, my uncle, who was so good and quiet, went out with an axe and cut down one of the ash trees, and my grandfather told me that he had not even thought of dissuading him. He added, "There's a saying that when one is pleased to see the bugs die in a fire, even though one's house is burnt down." His words caused me to smile warmly. My grandparents had a very hard time because of their revolutionary sons and grandsons. But in spite of their bitter trials and persecution, they never gave in, but fought on stoutly. In the closing period of Japanese rule, the Japanese imperialists forced Koreans to change their names to Japanese ones. But my grandparents refused to do so. In my home village, only my family held out to the last without changing their names to Japanese ones. All the other families changed their names. If they did not change their names, people found it hard to survive because the Japanese authorities refused them food rations. My uncle, Hung Ruk, was beaten and summoned to the police substation many times because he would not agree to change his name. Now, you aren't Kim Hung Yuk. What's your name? The policeman in charge would demand. To this, my uncle would answer, It's Kim Hung Ruk. At this, the policeman would leap on him and slap him across the face. Tell me again, what's your name? Policeman would ask him once more, and he would answer calmly, It's Kim Hung Ruk. And the policeman would slap him even harder in the face. Every time, he replied, Kim Hung Ruk. He was boxed on the ears, yet he never submitted. My grandfather said to his son, It's a truly good thing when you haven't changed your name to a Japanese one. When Sungju's fighting the Japanese, you can't change your name into a Japanese one, can you? We mustn't change our names on any account, even if it means we're beaten to death. When members of the family said farewell to my grandfather and grandmother and left the house, they would walk out through the Bushwood Gate in high spirits, saying that they would return after liberating the country. But I was the only one who returned. My father, who devoted his whole life to the independent movement, died under a foreign sky at the age of 31. A man of 31 is in the prime of his life. My grandmother came from home after his funeral. Even now, I can see her before my eyes as she wept at the side of her son's grave in the village of Yeongdeoksun, Fursan, Manchuria. Six years later, my mother too passed away, and Anne too, without seeing the day of national independence. My younger brother, Jolju, who joined a guerrilla unit after her mother's death and fought the enemy, was killed in battle. Before he fell on the battlefield, his body was never recovered. A few years later, my youngest uncle, who had been sentenced to a long years in prison and was serving his term in Manpho Gehol, died from cruel torture. Our family received notice that they should recover his body, but could not do so because they had no money. So my uncle's ashes were committed to the earth in the prison cemetery. Thus, over a period of 20 years, many of the strong, healthy sons of our family turned to ashes and lay scattered in foreign lands. When I returned home after liberation, my grandmother hugged me outside the brushwood gate and pounded on my chest, saying, How have you come back alone? Where did you leave your father and mother? Did you not want to return with them? With her heart bursting with such deep grief, what was my agony as I was walking through the brushwood gate of my home alone, without bringing with me even the bones of my parents, who were dead and lying in far-off foreign lands. After that, whenever I pass through the gate of someone else's home, I wonder how many members of the family had gone out through the gate, and how many of them had returned. All the gates in this country have a story about the tearful partings, and are associated with the longings for those who have not returned, and the heartrending pain of loss. Tens of thousands of fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters of this country gave their lives on the altar of national liberation. It took our people as long as 36 years to win back their country, crossing a sea of blood, tears, and sighs, and braving storms of shells and bullets. It was 36 years of bloody war, which cost us too high a price. But if it were not for this bloody war and sacrifices, how could we ever imagine our country as it is today? This century of ours would still be a century of misery and suffering, with the disgraceful slavery continuing. My grandfather and grandmother were old country people who knew nothing but farming. But truth to tell, I marveled at their firm, revolutionary spirit and was greatly inspired by it. It is not easy to bring up children and send them all out on the path of revolution and give them constant support while enduring silently all the ensuing trials and hardships. I think this is much more impressive than a few battles or some years in prison. The misfortune and distress of our family is the epitome of the misfortune and distress that befall our people after they lost their country. Under the inhuman rule of Japanese imperialism, millions of Koreans lost their lives, dying of starvation, of the cold, from burning, and from flogging. In a ruined country, neither the land nor the people can remain at peace. Under the roofs of houses in the ruined country, even the traders who live in luxury, as a reward for betraying their country, will not be able to sleep in peace. Even though they are alive, the people are worse than gutter dogs. And even if the mountains and rivers remain the same, they will not retain their beauty. A man who perceives this truth before others is called a forerunner. He who struggles against difficulties to save his country from tragedy is called a patriot. And he who sets fire to himself to demonstrate the truth and overthrows the unjust society by rousing the people to action is called revolutionary. My father was a pioneer of her country's national liberation movement. He dedicated his whole life to the revolution from his birth in Mangyeongdae on January 10th, 1894, until his death, as he lamented the dark reality of national decay on June 5th, 1926. I was born the eldest son of my father, Kim Young-jik, at Mangyeongdae on April 15th, 1912. That brings us to the end of the first part. Happy birthday, Kim Il Sung. A happy day of the happy day of the sun, everybody. There we go. There is the first part ever reading of Kim Il Sung's Reminiscences of the Century. What do you think, comrades? Good so far? Are you excited to hear the rest of this? Damn. Those first 15 pages. So next time we'll be talking about my father and the Korean National Association. That'll be next Wednesday. This will be this is going to be our Wednesday read from now on. So now we've got all our reads in a row. Friday's Frig Off Day. So we've got internationalism and practice on Mondays. We've got Kim Jong Il on Tuesdays. We've got Kim Il Sung's reminiscences on Wednesdays. We've got Stalin on Thursday. Interesting how that happens, isn't it, Dookie? This is the person that you were taught was an evil man who just wanted to betray his people for the sake of betraying his people because he wanted power and money for himself. Weird that he took such a circuitous route, huh? Very strange way to go about it. As we'll see as we read this book. Yeah, there's a reason why the country likes his family. They see his family as revolutionary, like I say, preceding Kim Il Sung, right? But it's not, and it's not a matter of them believing that. It's not a matter of them like believing that like the family's just like some unique thing. It's just a recognition that this has been a feature of their family, and people in their family have clearly been like, you know, on the front line of that struggle by their own effort and their own choices. Yeah, that was a rough read, I'm not gonna lie. In a couple spots. I think we should hear the song again before we go on to more news. I feel like it's the only way to sort of top that up. Yeah, it is almost like that, isn't it, Shadow? Weird. Weird, huh? 314th Comrade Kim Il Sung. His contributions to humankind, I assert and have asserted for the past 7 years or so, his contributions to humankind are just yet being recognized, or just beginning to be recognized. It can be 420 time now, yes. We're gonna do some news. And I could definitely use a puff after that read. My god. That's good though. I'm excited to do more. I gotta make sure I bookmark it, because I like the way it's laid out in this. So there we go. That's her new read.